Hi, I'm Rick Geise with Nature Safe Natural Organic Fertilizers, part of Darling Ingredients, the world's largest rendering company. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but great to be here. Nature Safe impacts soil health in really the most basic way, which is we feed soil microbes. We take the science and expertise of how we feed a dog, a cat, a chicken, actually taking those same ingredients, feather meal, meat meal, bone meal, blood meal, products that if we never sold another bag of Nature Safe, all of those ingredients would be sold as feed. And we take that science, that expertise, and apply those same principles to how to feed the soil and then ultimately the plant. So an organic fertilizer's value is really simply addressed in our opinion in three simple ways. One is how much organic nutrition you can stick in that product. So for us, again, as I mentioned, using these super concentrated proteins, the feather meals, the meat, the bone, the blood meals are very high in protein. So we take and formulate a product that is very concentrated in both protein and then of course the amino acids are the building blocks of those proteins. So Advanced Turf is very familiar with like our 10-2-8 formulation, for example. 10-2-8 actually has about 3 times more protein per pound than what you typically feed your dog. So it's a super concentrated protein source. So that's one. Two is the availability of that protein. So we process our proteins using low temperature steam pressure, kind of like if you stuck a piece of meat in a crock pot. You're taking the proteins, which kind of look like this if you're looking at them under a microscope, and we pull them apart. And then we separate them like that, and that changes the digestibility of that protein. And digestibility then translates into how that product will release in terms of consistent, predictable, complete release in terms of feeding soil microbes and ultimately the plant. So that's 2. 3 is ultimately what does that mean in terms of an overall IPM program. I think we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But an IPM, from a how does that integrate into the overall program of that turf professional? And that part of it is really for us creating a nutrition foundation that makes all the other good things work a little bit better. It's just kind of like eating right and exercising. The longer you do it, the better the results, and there is a cumulative effect in those benefits. So really just what we're saying is that if you look at a budget of be it a golf course superintendent, a sports turf manager, a lawn care operator, there's dollars allocated there. What we look at is how Nature Safe can create the greatest basic ecosystem in the soil to make all the other things they do better. So again, when we feed soil microbes and we explode those populations exponentially, you're getting a lot of benefits from that. You are getting porosity of the soil, because it's not just the impact of increasing soil microbes, it's the impact that those soil microbes have when they decompose. So when they decompose, that creates additional fertility value. It's why the longer you use Nature Safe, ultimately a little bit less of a rate you have to apply, because you get this fertilizer factory effect in the soil. You also get, from that decomposing microbes, that porosity in the soil improves water management, nutrient management by opening up especially heavy clay soils. And then you get this other effect, which is an impact on things like dollar spot or other disease type programs. So if you look at what happens with diseases, when like dollar spot, using that as an example, obviously nitrogen can counter some dollar spot pressure, but what Nature Safe does is it actually creates this environment we call competitive exclusion. So by feeding beneficial microbe populations, those beneficial bacteria explode their success on the food source, the proteins, the Nature Safe. Pathogenic populations, the disease-causing bad guys, actually are wonderfully strong survivors, but relatively poor competitors. So the success of the beneficial bacteria populations actually negates the populations of the pathogens. So that competitive exclusion effect actually improves the efficacy, or can actually extend the interval of your control program.